Yo-Jo June may be a thing in the past, but as we roll and ramp up into Cobra Convergence throughout the month of July, we may as well call this Yo-Jo July. And what I'm going to do right now is welcome everybody to this edition of the Toy Connections online live stream, or TKO. The topic of army builders has always been a very hot one among collectors in any genre. Now, I know we did a stream on army builders in general a number of months ago. We talked about everything there, from G.I. Joe stuff to Stormtroopers to Sharkticons to Horde Troopers, you name it, we did it there. This one will be targeted with G.I. Joe stuff just because of Cobra Convergence and the ramp up into San Diego Comic-Con and everybody's excitement there for what's going to happen with the G.I. Joe panel and the announcements. And we've also got a Dragonfly this month. Now, I'm not planning to weave all those topics into this discussion. I'm just saying that the G.I. Joe mood did not end in June, and why we have all these things to be excited for in July and the months beyond. So I've got two fantastic guests here. I see there's a lot of people in the live chat already and a lot of comments, and a lot of people say hello to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring on my first of two panelists. We met at Joe Fest. I've watched his channel a whole bunch of times. He is the curator, the master behind Cobra Convergence. Bryan from Hooded Cobra Commander 788. Welcome back, my friend.
Greetings. I thought you were going to put Dave on first. He said some nice things like, oh, he must be talking about Dave. But no, it's me. It's me. Hi. Hello. It was lovely to meet you at Joe Fest, and I'm super thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and as far as the nice things I would say about Dave, I was just going to copy and paste that introduction.
Yeah.
But now that you've called my bluff on it, I got to make one up for him. You know, one time I just ran out of material for an introduction, and I went, oh, by the way, this is my buddy Adam. And then we just threw him on camera from the Hardly Articulated channel, and everyone was kind of like, just like, no red carpet entrance for him. I'm like, I just ran out of text. So, you know. So I know you're working on a lot of stuff. I know that the Skull Reviews just put up his Cobra Convergence video today on Destro.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I know that you've got you've got a lot going on. You've got the tribute there to Form BX257, Kevin. Yeah.
Yes. So Cobra Convergence, obviously we're doing Cobra all month, and we've got a lot of people. HCC788.com, the calendar is at the website, so please check that and make sure you keep up with the presenters every day. For me, the whole month is Cobra Convergence, so I've got Cobra stuff coming all month. But yeah, we're working on something a little special for a friend of ours that has not been around for a while, a friend who we hope is doing well, but we don't know, and someone who helped start all of this back in 2016. So I thought this would be appropriate. I thought this is something that we could do to show our appreciation. One thing that I really love about this community is that we care about people enough that if they are away for a while, we don't forget about them. And people still ask about Kevin. People will still be asking about Kevin, you know, probably years from now, unless he comes back and tells us all that he's fine.
Back in the 2014 to 16 era, when I was trying to find G.I. Joe stuff, I mean, I'd been collecting before that, but I started looking on YouTube after. There was you, there was him, and there was just a few others there, and there were some like generalized channels that cover everything pop culture, but also add in G.I. Joe. So I'm really glad you're doing this tribute to Kevin, and I know a few people have volunteered to help with this.
Yeah, and if Kevin ever sees any of this, I would just ask, you know, reach out to us if you can. Just let us know if you're all right. You know, we care. We're your friends. We worked with you for years. You're a great guy, and obviously we're not entitled to know what's going on if he doesn't want to share, but we would like to know that you're okay. So Kevin, if you see this or anything else connected to it, please reach out and say hello
to one of us. Yep. Love to hear from him. And I'm also repping on the 25th, we got Treasures for Trigger, a first timer for Cobra Convergence, and he gave me this shirt through Matthew Comstock brought it over, had a parcel from him. So that was something nice. I was glad to get this too. So we're talking about all the friends from Cobra Convergence. And yeah, speaking of friends and new friends, and I just mentioned Matthew Comstock, who recently put me onto this amazing podcast, which covers, a lot of other things, but on their Audible Interlude podcast, Dave, Christian, and Noel cover a lot of G.I. Joe stuff. Me and Steve were guests representing Delta 17 just last week. So to welcome him for the first time on the channel, Dave from Needless Things / Audible Interlude, welcome to Toy Connections Online, my friend.
Hey, everybody. What's happening?
And you've got a Cobra Convergence thing coming out later this month as well.
We do on July the 16th. Normally
Awesome.
we do Mondays, but this time we're doing a Sunday just for scheduling purposes because, you got to be flexible if you want to pull in that big live streaming YouTube podcasting money. If you want those dollars, you got to be willing to move stuff around.
Yeah. Do you know what time you're going on the Sunday or not yet?
On Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern time on
perfect.
the Needless Things YouTube channel.
Perfect. I just wanted to make sure if it's Cobra Convergence related, because I'm probably going to go on in the morning, my time / around noon-ish between, your time, which people go on at the same time all the time. But I just thought with you here right now, I'm like, oh, shoot, Sunday, you're right. I usually stream then. So, and I've got mine next Friday as well. Me and Hans Chow are doing a history of G.I. Joe, 1983. But yeah, welcome, Dave.
It's great to be here. This pre-evening streaming is a new experience for me.
You know what? That's okay, right? You can talk Joes anytime, 24/7.
That's
from
right.
What I understand. So, yeah, and you and your friends were great hosts last week. We'd never been guests before, me and Steve. So trying to do that thing on Zoom rather than StreamYard, as I told you, was quite enlightening. I was like, oh, this is kind of a different interface.
Well, I understand that a little bit better now because being here in a StreamYard, I have learned I need to ditch Zoom as soon as possible and switch over to StreamYard because, my gosh, this interface, this is incredible. If I had this to work with, our show would be even better.
Well, you know what? It is free if you're just trying to get the regular version of it. Like, you won't get any branding. You can only maximize 6 people on screen.
I'm looking at the branding, pal.
Yeah, and that's fine. When you get the branding, it's I mean, when I did my first episode, I did it without the branding. But speaking of making money on YouTube and the person who actually pays for my StreamYard every month, he's already sent a super chat in from the Netherlands, our good friend Jody from GenXToysGeek. Greetings and salutations. He always says greetings and salutations. I could not talk to him for 6 months, and the first thing he'll say on a phone call, greetings and salutations. So, hopefully I can scroll all the way back to the start of the chat because I'm not used to it being this busy. So I'm just going to say hello to the chat right now. We got Figuratively Speaking, who came in nice and early. I was keen to get things going. We've got Matthew Comstock, who, like I said, put me onto your channel there, Dave and friends. We got K-Dawg Broadcasting, one of the very loyal patrons of the channel. We've got Beta Ray Bob, who I'm seeing more and more pop up in chats. Allison Troy, the latest Toy Connections Patreon supporter. We've got Big Gay Dave, who supports a lot of us with his very unique handle. We've got Payne's Toy Samples. I was just on his channel last night. Wilhelm Toy and Hobby, who hung out with us at Joe Fest very recently. We've got Boba Hicks, also from Europe there. Cougar McGilly Cuddy. Hello. Jello. Scuba Pete, one of the moderators of the channel, who's always in support of everybody out there. Jeff Morris as well. My goodness, you folks came out in full force today. Ooh, Silver K, good to see you today as well.
Is Full Force here too?
Yeah, I probably got to get Chris from Full Force on here.
Introducing Chris Diagnostic 80.
Yes. And we've got Jeremy Kimberlin, who likes to switch his handle every now and then. Thank you for not trolling me about Bret Hart and why Shawn Michaels is better this time, because you knew you were finally getting on my, I don't want to say getting under my skin, but starting to finally get reactions out of me. Because normally I play it cool when you troll me on wrestling stuff, and I was finally starting to cave a little bit. So thank you for not trolling me this morning. Jeremy, you're a sweetheart. It's all good.
Ratface is the greatest of all time.
Hitman is the greatest of all time. Yes. Ratface44 Reviews, who's doing some really great G.I. Joe classified reviews. Also another patron of this channel. And my goodness, it just keeps going here. Ian Sweeney, good to see you all. Yeah, I wish Form BX was here, buddy, but he's not right now. Impossible Pie, Tim, all the way from Ontario. Good to hear from you, my good friend, as well. I've already said hi to Jody. We got K Slater 23 also in the chat, and I've missed Pericles, Dragon Ball Z. Sorry if I've missed your name. I'm not usually used to being this busy. We've got either Dave or one of his buddies pulling double duty in the chat. It's you. All right.
I'm in the chat. I'm enjoying this option of actually participating in the chat.
Awesome. See, you can do that, right? On StreamYard.
Yeah.
We've got Action J. Oh, did I miss somebody else? My goodness. We've got Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. As I watch Band of Brothers, the military stuff is really on my mind lately because I'm about midway through that series. We got Hedgehog Action, and speaking of amazing friends, Matthew Comstock has sent super chat as well. Thank you, my good friend, saying a gathering of legends, and thank you for your help in setting up the booth at the Delta 17 show, and for your friendship ever since. Well, before and after that, because we talk weekly now, sometimes multiple times a week. So, yeah. And GenXToysGeek Jody has decided to send yet another super chat. And thank you for the 10 euros there. So that's about what, 150 Canadian dollars, right? Should be able to afford my part of that Dragonfly now. And before we get started as well, Brian, because I'd recently completed an Evolution of Toys Green Beret video where I walked through the history of the Green Beret up until Falcon and all that. Your Joe Colton video reminded me that was also a Green Beret wearing figure, which I watched recently. So I was actually watching that again this morning as well, because it's kind of a lengthy one where you had the Joe Colton and Mike Irizarry on that particular episode 3 years ago. And just so you know, that's the 64 Action Soldier right behind me there with the combat attack set. So
nice.
Just thought I'd mention I was looking at that recently. Gentlemen, we're 12 minutes into the show, and all I felt like I've done is talk about anything but the topic we're talking about today. And read out super chats from very generous people. So folks, I mean, everybody loves a good army, a good shelf of stuff, whether you collect G.I. Joe or not. But one thing that I did want to ask as we get started, we all talk about army building. We talk about troops marching in lines. But what about fleet building? Like, have you considered, getting armies worth of HISS tanks or, other, rattlers or whatnot? We'll go reverse counterclockwise, or we'll go counterclockwise, reverse clockwise this time. Dave is a first-time guest. Why don't we hit you up on this question?
As far as, so we're kicking it off with the fleet building, which is interesting because it's of course, who wouldn't want a dozen HISS tanks? But I gotta say, I have never, in any of the things that I collect, and I've collect a lot. If you check out the Needless Things YouTube channel, you'll see the variety of things I look at over there. Ken, you looks like you're kind of along the same lines as me as far as the impulse control issues go. But I just, in general, and this is why I was interested to get involved in a troop building conversation, I would rather have a new thing than another of a thing I already have, in general. Now, there are exceptions, and I'm sure we'll get to those later. But, I've got probably 10 HISS tanks, but they're all different HISS tanks. I got a couple when they did the retros at Walmart recently. I bought 2 of those because why not? At that point, it was so wild to see HISS tanks at retail again that you get excited and you're like, well, I'll just get 2 of these just to have them. Same thing with the Stingers that went up on Pulse. I can order 2. I might as well order 2, but I didn't have any urge to get like 10 of them or anything like that. So fleet building, not really something I ever considered too seriously.
Okay, no, fair enough. And I don't know if getting a bunch of snake armors is considered fleet building or army building or not, because they're technically not a figure, but they kind of are, because in the cartoon it's both, right? So yeah, that's about the only thing here, right? And Matthew Comstock says he bought 5 retro HISS tanks and 2 Fangs. Wish he could get some Ostrikers adult money, but maybe you could get the crossover G.I. Joe Transformers Bumblebee / Stalker Ostriker, though that's a bit pricey, so you might be capped at 2. I don't know. Robert Monty, thank you for the super chat. Says very cool seeing two of his favorite YouTubers together, Hooded Cobra Commander and Audible Interlude Dave talking Joes. Guys, thoughts on the HasLab and whether it hit final tier? And yes, I inserted Dave's name instead of mine on this super chat because I think that pretty soon it'll be 3 of your favorites. Robert's a channel member, very loyal, love seeing him in the chat, and wants to know, do we think it'll hit the final tier? I'm going to go with yes.
Yeah.
I think
Bryan?
so. It'll be down to the wire probably, but there is usually that, last day surge. So probably so. It's not burning it up like the His Tank did, but I mean it got funded really fast. Yeah, I'm expecting. I think it's normal to expect a surge there at the end, and that probably will push it over.
Yeah, Dave, I think you pretty much echo the same sentiments there.
Yeah, the last day FOMO is going to kick in. I'm predicting we end at around 21,000, and we will be doing a live stream starting at 11 p.m. EST to count down the final hour of the HasLab Dragonfly. So check that out on the Needless Things YouTube channel.
Awesome. And Dave, I might have to bug you about your audio setup at some point in time because I really like the crispness of your audio. So I may bug you at some point.
We can talk because I want to learn about this StreamYard, man. This is fantastic.
Oh, you learned everything you need to know about StreamYard already. But yes, we can definitely have like a phone call and chat about it or something.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, I mean, when Glenda hit, there was kind of like a lot of negativity came. And that's partly why I did my history video on Glenda. Because as Bryan knows, there were at least 2 Glendas I saw on the floor there at Joe Fest. So I started asking people a bit more about her because there were some people who'd been going to the Joe Cons for like so many years. I just started asking about the rare and the foreign figures a bit, and I just had the information available. And then people started to warm up to Glenda a little bit. I started seeing people talk on His Tank and say, "Oh, I saw this video from Ken, and he helped warm me up to the Glenda figure." And I'm like, that wasn't my intention. I just wanted to give a history plus me missing out on one recently. But I think once, you hope they would reveal the last tier soon, because before Ripcord funded, I think they revealed Glenda already. I think, if I remember correctly. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I think I think we got him unlocked, and then a day or so later, they revealed Glenda. But I don't see them doing that this time. I think with a week left, I think tomorrow, and this is just pure speculation because that's all we do here. I think tomorrow we'll probably see the last tier. I can't imagine they're going to wait too long on that.
Fair enough. Okay. Yeah, you know what? They're going to want that last tier to be a banger. Some things that casual fans can get into as well. So, Bryan, what do you think about fleet building stuff rather than just army building?
Fleet building, you hit on like the one thing that I really sort of fleet build, and that's His Tanks. I mean, space is an issue, and when you talk about army building figures, you can fill a shelf with a figure. When you talk about army building or fleet building vehicles, then it fills up really fast. It takes up a lot of space really fast. So the way I approached it, there are some variations on the vintage His Tank with the 788 stickers. So I was like, okay, I'll get each of those. That's 3. And then I ran across like a cheap one at a resale shop. So I pick up 4, pick up number 5, really cheap one. Just got lucky. And then like the later iterations, the 50th anniversary, the retro. So rather than just like buying a bunch of the same His Tank, I justify having a bunch of them because they're all a little different. Well, okay, they're mostly a little different. So yeah, that's the one that I really like to get, and I like to see lots of variations of it. I mean, it's a classic. I've picked up a few fangs. I don't know. I'm pointing up. There's a Cobra Fang up there that you can't. Well, there's one here too. That's the retro one.
Yeah, if you want, I can full screen you if you want to show it to us.
You're fine. Okay. So I picked up a couple things here and there, but that's not quite the same thing. I just kind of end up with a couple of them. But with the Hiss tank, if I can get one that's not too expensive, I don't mind picking one up. I really like that vehicle, and I just love how it looks as a group, as a squad, as a shelf full of those guys.
Oh, fair enough. I mean, it can be a bit of a space killer when you start to fleet build and an army build. Or, I mean, army build, you can kind of just keep cramming the figures together like I've been doing. And then eventually they start knocking each other over and you start having to angle them and you start trying to find smaller stands to put them on. Because I love the G.I. Joe stands, but eventually I started buying the small round ones that what Ian Sanderson sells. And they just occupy much less space. So yeah, I mean, I'd love to fleet build. When people say they buy 5 Hiss tanks, especially the HasLab version, I assume that they're probably selling 4 of them.
Probably.
Right, because you go into like the raffle pages on Facebook, and people will probably just sell the figures individually and then the actual Hiss tank and hope to more than make your money back. So I find that to be a bit of a difficult thing to touch on. As for actual like army builders, I'm assuming you both army build the O-ring stuff?
No.
No, okay, good. Don't want to be presumptuous. Sort of. Okay, good. Let's talk. Who wants to go first? When
I was a kid, I didn't have 2 of anything. I had 1 Cobra officer, 1 Cobra trooper, and again, I would rather get a different character than get another one that I already own. So like it didn't even occur to me back then. And then even into, because I collected Joe from 82 to 87 and then got back in around 97 when the Stars and Stripes set came out. And even then wasn't really thinking too much about troop building, but then Hasbro realized we can make money off of these adult collectors now who have disposable income by selling them sets of troop builders. And they did those great like Crimson sets and Cobra Troop sets and all those Toys R Us exclusive sets. And it honestly, it wasn't until then that I realized, oh my gosh, it looks really cool to have a dozen Cobra troops or more. That's all my modern era stuff, which is when I got really deep into troop building. Well, I say really deep. Since I've sort of been paying attention to the G.I. Joe online community, I've seen people with like 500 Cobra Troopers, so I realize I'm not that deep. But yeah, when I was a kid, and even now with O-Ring, like if Hasbro presented it to us, if they had done those Cobra, the officer and the troop 2-pack that they did, if that had been 2 troops, I would have bought 20 of those. Sure, I would have, but cost-wise right now, just troop building vintage O-Rings, not going to happen.
Yeah, some people really love army building the classified stuff as well, which I don't know. I like to pair them up. I don't like to have too many of the army builders for classified.
It's tough because of the price point. It's just not that practical. But I'll keep an eye on the prices, and I'll end up with 4 bats or whatever. Because I don't want more than that, but I do like 4 bats with Cobra officer in front of them, or if they make Overlord at some point, obviously he's the choice. But I do like the look of a small unit of classified figures. But yeah, I'm not into getting like 20 of them or anything.
Fair enough. Yeah, I feel you there, because then you can get another character at that point in time.
Right.
Why not?
Right.
So yeah. What about you, Brian? How do you feel about all this?
I sort of army build the vintage O-rings. Like Dave, I didn't have multiple of the same figure when I was a kid. But I really wanted to, because like in the comic book, in the cartoon, there were always lots of these blue shirts around all attacking, and I had like 1. And so I wanted to, but there was so much other stuff coming out. Like when I had my own money, I couldn't justify buying one that I already had. I had to get some of the other ones. And then when my parents, when I was spending my parents' money on it, they're like, "You already have that one. Get a new one." So it was like that with like the Cobra troops, also with Star Wars. Before the days of GI Joe, back in pre GI Joe era, I wanted like a ton of stormtroopers. I mean, look at the movie. There's not just one stormtrooper, but I never had more than one stormtrooper. As an adult collector, I have a dilemma. So I'm trying to get stuff that I want to review. I want to get a nice version of it that I can put on camera. And I'm trying to collect like all the vintage, the whole vintage set, which is in itself expensive and takes up a lot of space. So it's impractical to fill up a whole shelf with Cobra bats or Cobra, Crimson Guard or whatever. I don't have a whole shelf to fill up with it. But what I've done is similar to my approach to the Hiss tanks. Like with the Crimson Guard, there are variations. There's the lighter red and the darker red. There are like 4 or 5 file card variations. There's the backpack variation. So as I'm collecting those, or as I'm trying to put those together, I end up with an army because, sometimes you can't just get the backpack. Sometimes you need to get another figure to get the backpack you want. So now you got another one. Sometimes you can't just get the file card when you're looking for a specific file card. So you end up with another figure with the file card. So I've ended up with like a significant number of Crimson Guard. K-Dawg says, what's the eel count up to? That's a good question. I haven't counted them for a while. Thank you for asking. I need to add that up. Thank you for asking. I need to check. The eels, though, that is the one where I have intentionally army built because I like the way the eels look as a group. I like the eels as a crew for the Cobra Moray. I think their colors go perfectly with the Cobra Moray, and there are lots of slots on the Cobra Moray to fill up. So the Cobra eels, I'd say that's the only one that I've like consciously and intentionally picked up a bunch of copies of. And I don't remember exactly how many I have. I think a lot of them are with the Moray, so I need to go look at the Moray and count them. But yeah, for the most part, though, and this is why my answer is sort of, I get multiple army builders with the goal of getting all the variations and having them presentable for a review so that I can show and not just tell, all the things that you can look out for these figures.
Oh, fair enough. And you're absolutely right on all that front because you're trying to get all the variations. You end up with a spare figure, you put accessory pack stuff on that sometimes, or maybe they don't even come armed. I think that's kind of where you were going.
Yeah.
With some of that. Red Foreman, you are so generous. Sent a bunch of super chats yesterday, and you've sent another one today. Says afternoon, Ken and Hoodie. Sorry, other dude. Other dude is needless thing / Audible Interlude Dave. And because I keep flashing up the chats like this, the names don't show up anymore. And when I take the chat off like that, then you see the names. So that's happened to me as well. I've had situations where somebody came on to watch Michael from Toy Habits and went, yeah, the other two guys are pretty cool too. And I'm like, my channel, but thank you. Right, as the host, but I think I made a recurring viewer on that one. So anyway, 42 people watching live right now. Why don't you all hit that like button and spread this to other people so they know to check out this stream and check out the other two gentlemen's channel / social media outlets as we go along. Look, everything that you both said about army building is absolutely true. I, as a kid, exactly the same thing. How do you justify to your parents getting more than one thing? When you first start getting back into collecting and you have very limited disposable income, how do you justify getting a second of a figure that is not is the same as what you already have. As a kid, I had 2-foot soldiers. That was about it. As far as army building, that was the closest I ever got. As the price started hiking and I saw things going up a little bit, I did start picking up more like Crimson Guards, Viper, Snow Serpents, but I cap it at a certain number. You know what I mean? Like I don't, once I have enough, I'm just like, I don't want to get more, because now that's money that could be used for other things. So I do army build, but I went through an army building phase and I'm kind of coming out of it right now, which is why I thought that this topic could come up. As far as G.I. Joe Classified is concerned, like people are talking about the 112 stuff, like I mentioned earlier, I bought two, I buy 2 of each sometimes. Like I got 2 Snow Serpents coming. I will probably get eventually the Televiper with the Trouble Bubble, but I've got one that I've kit bashed with some Gridiron Studio stuff. So, but to each their own. Some people will only army build the 112 stuff. Some people have to army build in 118. Some people will get more than one of the 16 stuff, which to me sounds crazy space-wise. But yeah, let's read out a couple more super chats before we go on. GenXToysGeek Jody, thank you again. He says he's got to drop off. Have fun, chaps. I think it's about dinner time over there in the Netherlands. So, or you're just dropping off because you're early to bed, early to rise. I'm not really sure. Red Foreman, thank you once again. Says, speaking of the Moray, says next year is Cobra's turn and we already have land, air, sea is due. That's a good point. Copperhead isn't tied to the Moray, but he's a boat operator. And I would think that the hydrofoil might not be big enough to be a HasLab. So, or is it? Maybe. Because the hydrofoil was the length of this tank. So
definitely the hydrofoil would be a big HasLab.
A big honker.
Yeah.
It was a big thing. But
no, sorry.
Since Copperhead was mentioned, the water moccasin.
That's the one I'm thinking of. Sorry. That's the one I'm thinking of.
That might be.
That's the one that I'm saying. That's the length of a his tank. So that so I got Moray and hydrofoil. I forgot were the same thing, even though it says it on the box. But yes, thank you very much for saving that one, gentlemen. Yes, it was the water moccasin I was thinking of. So who knows?
I think that'd be a fantastic HasLab. I think it could definitely be. I mean, first of all, just to see it in 1/12 scale would be great. But I think it's something that there's a lot of opportunity to plus up the features and really create a great toy like they did with the HISS tank. But at the same time, if you do that, well, then who's the pilot? Because we've already got Copperhead.
Yeah.
And that's one of the drawbacks, right? Because there are people who will get the Dragonfly, and one of their drivers of getting the Dragonfly is Wild Bill, right? And you wanted some sort of a paratrooper, so you've got Airborne there in Night Force colors, and you wanted a co-pilot, so Glenda made some sense thematically. I was kind of hoping that with the Dragonfly they do, and Ryan Sweeney mentioned this a little while ago. He was thinking Gaucho would be a good reveal as a mechanic.
I love that choice. I've heard that a couple of times, and I think it'd be fantastic.
It is. The only thing is it's too deep of a cut again. They've got the tooling though, right? It's less of a deep cut than Glenda.
Yeah.
Right. Because he was made a convention exclusive a little while ago.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And Matthew Comstock makes a good point here. Like you can, like if army builders start to get really expensive, you can kit bash stuff together using Marauder gun runners.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And he just built a Mac Boland, who I had to look up because I wasn't super familiar. And of course the Chuck Norris Lone Wolf McQuaid. Yeah. So, I mean, there are ways and options to do this. It's funny. I wanted to talk about this a little bit as well, but Ian Sweeney has already mentioned it in the chat. Army building the good guys.
Oh, yeah.
Think about that.
Well, I mean, Modern, it was easy because they actually released green shirts, which I mentioned I've only recently become kind of involved in the G.I. Joe online community. I had no idea there were people who were so opposed to green shirts. That's a thing out there. Which I get that point of view that G.I. Joe is, well, it's specialized individual troops, but I always like the idea of green shirts as support for the Joes. They're not technically part of the team, but you need that backup. You need those grunts, so to speak, to help these specialized Joes in larger interactions. So I loved the 25th anniversary green shirts. I bought a couple of those sets. So I've got a nice collection of those. I like having those, and then the Steel Brigades that they did for the 25th as well, or whatever. I refer to all of that as 25th. I know it's 25th and 50th and Pursuit of Cobra. I know they're different titles, but I was collecting it at the time, and I just thought of cool GI Joes in the stores. I'm buying it all because it was way cheaper then.
Yeah, 100%, right? And some of them are still relatively affordable. I really want to get the Iron Grenadier back from the Pursuit of Cobra line, because that's just a gorgeous Iron Grenadier, and it looks like a heavy trooper even if you display it with your O-ring stuff. He's so decked out that he could be an O-ring figure because he's a bit thicker, right? So, but the question is about good guy army builders. So Dave's on topic and Ken's veering off topic. Okay. Bryan, over to you. Army building the good guys.
Well, I kind of came about that sort of in the same way as the Crimson Guard, not intending to, but I needed all the variations of Steel Brigade, so I ended up with a bunch of those. That's a difficult one to army build. I know some folks will army build Grunt because I think in Action Force Grunt was an army builder. He wasn't an individual named character. But for me, Grunt has always been an individual. He's always been a named character for me. So I'm less prone to army build the good guys. But I do have me some Steel Brigade. Again, for the same reason. I wanted to get each one. That took a lot of time. That's one, though, where I don't think I would intentionally get a lot of them. As much as I like the Steel Brigade, the price point on that is just... I mean, it was not great a few years ago, but it's getting ridiculous now. I mean, it's going through the roof. So I'd say that's kind of the limit to my good guy army building. That certainly hasn't limited other collectors. I mean, I know someone army builds Sergeant Slaughter. So, you know, we got.
I wonder who that is.
Somebody's probably army building it.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. 777 Sergeant Slaughters, I believe that's what he said his goal was. So it's like,
holy cow.
Sorry, I've just managed to lose something here, so I'm just...
Well, just real quick, I wanted to throw something else out there.
There it is.
And this is maybe a little bit of a controversial topic, but, you know, Super 7's reaction figures, they have introduced a lot of really cool G.I. Joe troop builders in. The Combat Engineer, they did the green shirts with all the different skin tone and weapon varieties, and then also the G.I. Joe Camo Trooper from Sunbow. And I love those. Now, I'm not army building them because, my gosh, $20 a piece for those figures is steep. But I love that they're being made.
Yeah, 100%. Look, you got a lot of options, right? And I'm just going to lean into what I do for army building a little bit here. But I also wanted to read out Red Foreman sent yet another super chat and says the Moray would come with a lamprey. That's a good point. And that's a character at all Cobra vehicles are... They're technically army builders, like you said. And since we already have Copperhead, we have another driver. So that's something that could easily sit in the Moray. So I think that makes a lot of sense as far as the Moray / Hydrofoil. So definitely some good thoughts right over there. Now, one thing that and Bryan brought it up too, like when I went to Toy Traders, one of the things that came up is one time the owner put out, or many times he's put out, a whole peg of Grunt figures back when they were easier to get, because let's face it, G.I. Joe was less popular a few years ago. And somebody bought up the entire peg worth of Grunts because that to them was Grunt. Was the army builder, was the green shirt. I assume that means that their unique Grunt character was the Falcon Glider tan version. I'm assuming, because that would make sense for your own headcanon. Steel Brigades, Bryan can correct me if I'm wrong, and Dave, maybe you can weigh in on this too, but I think the myth is that the Goldhead Steel Brigade is the expensive one. But I believe the version A is actually the pricier one, if I'm not mistaken.
That is something that's been floating around. That wasn't my experience when I was getting them. I came across the version 1A much earlier and much cheaper than the Goldhead. So I can't account for other people's experience, but that's not been my experience.
Okay,
the Goldhead was, a challenge, especially since I needed to also get the patch. So that was
Okay.
a bugger.
Fair enough. Okay. I'm not sure, but from what I recall, I remember some people saying they had a harder time tracking down version A, but I'm not sure the rarity of the patch on that as well.
I would love to see some production numbers, but they may not exist. I honestly think these are decisions made like at the factory level to swap out parts. So there's probably not a record of, well, we made, 500,000 of the 1A and then 600,000 of the 1B or what. Those numbers probably don't exist anywhere. I think they were swapping out parts based on what was available at the time. So it's hard to say. It's really hard to say. I do know that the 1A did not have a long run of the version 1 variants. It's definitely the most rare of those.
Yes.
So that's easy. That's absolutely true. But in my experience, I was able to get it fairly early on, and the gold head was, at least for me, was much more challenging.
Okay, fair enough. I don't have either one of those among, the rare figures. I don't have version A and I don't have the gold head version. I'm going to weigh in on a second on how to army build the good guys, at least from like what I've been doing. But Red Foreman, once again, feel like a spoiled kid at a candy shop here, just saying, I want more. And Red Foreman just keeps buying me more stuff. So that's how I feel today, but I'm very flattered. Hasbro did shield army builders with jumpsuits and different heads, full army jumpsuit with gloves and different heads and accessories in the pack. Is by shield, does he mean Marvel Legends?
Yeah. Okay. They did a 2-pack with enough, very similar to the Steel Brigade that they're releasing in Classified, with different head and parts, so you could make more than just 2 looks.
Okay, fair enough. No, thank you for clarifying that, Dave. And Red Foreman, I think with all the super chats, I can pretty much confirm I'm going to get the Dragonfly now. So thank you, because he's been spoiling me since last week. So anyway, 50 people watching. Everybody hit that like button, and let's, like I said, spread the love of army builders, Cobra Convergence, G.I. Joe stuff, toys in general. One of the things that when I was at Toy Traders and I asked about the army builders, the owner mentioned in that same conversation when we talked about the Grunt army builder potential option, excuse me, he mentioned the re-release of the Action Soldier in the O-ring scale in 1994, which, Brian, you've covered that on your channel, Dave. I think you know what we're talking about. And they did like the re-release in the O-ring of Action Soldier, Action Sailor, Action Pilot, Action Marine. And when I started army building, I grabbed as many of the Action Soldiers as I could and got the keychain ones. And I grabbed a few of the Action Marine. But when I look at the Action Marine with the camo pattern, he actually looks good with the Action Force Z. I know there's a lot of love for Action Force, both the modern and the vintage line in the chat right now that I'm seeing. And I wanted to lean into that, is that the Action Marine looks good with the Action Force Z Force with the sort of camo pattern. Right. So I thought that would be a great Action Force army builder in my mind. And you've got the G.I. Joe army builder. And then you can have the Action Sailor for your flag if you want, or Action Pilot for whatever you want to, for whatever aircraft you want to have in your collection there. So that was my way of doing it. Right. And you weave in the original like vintage 1960s and 70s Joes as well. So for me, that was it. Right, that's my good guy army builder. And I know some people have talked about Black Major in the chat. Scuba Pete brought up Black Major Eels earlier, but Black Major is also doing a green shirt. I may or may not get that because I think the Action Soldier keychain is still relatively easy to come by. So if you wanted to do that and use accessory pack weapons, it's pretty good in my opinion. And yeah, like right there, got the action pilot as a keychain figure, and absolutely still love it. And yes, Neil Hill, one of our ringers for Delta 17, always pumping us on the forums, online, etc. It's good to have fans of the brand early on. And Neil will, I think Steve sent you a shirt in the mail, so you can join the ranks of the Delta 17 fandom officially, I guess is how else I can put it. You got swag coming, let's put it that way. So be proud. Yeah. Well, So we talked about the good guys. We talked a bit about the bad guys. One of the things that always comes up, and if either of you two wanna talk about anything else, just bring it up. Like, I'm not going off of any agenda at this point in time. I'm sort of just winging it at this point. But one of the things that always comes up is people say that if you army build too much, you've cornered the market and you've allowed the price to go up on the secondary market. I'm not sure I believe that, because I swear, was it on Yojo or was it on his tank forum a while ago? There was a story about somebody buying every snow serpent in existence, trying to do so. Okay, so you're familiar with that story, Brian?
I am, yes.
And I think the person got up to something like 10,000 snow serpents, and they still kept showing up on eBay.
Yeah.
And I swear, it might have been at a Joe Con or something, that I heard a story once. This is before I've been collecting Joe at the time, but before my time in the fandom, in the social media fandom, that Kirk Bazigian or somebody flashed up some charts and said that they made anywhere from 900,000 to 1.1 million of a lot of the popular figures.
Mm-hmm.
So unless you're gonna buy up all 1.1 million in existence, including the ones that got buried in the sand somewhere in the middle of nowhere, right? I don't think you're actually raising the price. I think that's a function of the entire market, right? So like when I got, like, what is it, 10 eels or 10 Crimson Guards, people say, oh, you're raising the market value. I'm like, 10 out of 1,000,000 is nothing. I think if you buy one out of the 50,000 that are, I don't know the numbers, but let's say it's 50,000 now, because it's definitely not as much as before. I think you're cornering the market more just on that portion and ratio. But I don't know, gents, maybe weigh in a little bit on that.
I can't imagine. Do you know how many people you would have to have trying to buy as many, let's say, snow serpents as they could to actually affect the scarcity of the product on the market? I mean, it's an interesting point to raise, and it really does get down to, why are you buying 500 snow serpents? But if that's what somebody wants, or why are you buying 777 Sergeant Slaughters, other than the fact that it rolls off the tongue so easily? But we all collect weird different things for weird different reasons, and I don't think that you could have 100 people buying every snow serpent they see, and I just don't think it would realistically affect how difficult or pricey it is for any of the rest of us. I think there's a lot more of this stuff out there. Just going to Joe Fest, we were all just at Joe Fest, and think back to how many of the same thing you saw just there at that one little tiny point in time, that one little tiny location on the planet. We saw that much of most of the wide release mass market O-ring stuff. You just can't imagine that's a real thing.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, Brian?
Yeah, I do want to talk about the Snow Serpent story. I'm glad that you brought it up, because that kind of gives us like the extreme end of army building. So I do want to talk about that, but I want to echo Dave's point here. So if you basic economics, if there's more demand for a particular figure and the supply is limited, the price should go up. But we are talking about items that were mass produced. Okay, so we're not talking about little specialty boutique items. These were mass produced by factories. There are a lot of them out there. So if army building were to raise the price, that might be just a negligible, just that much. But what you will see, I think, when you look at like the whole brand and the whole collection of vintage G.I. Joe, is that there are some army builders that are really expensive, but I think they are because they're popular, which would be which is the same with Snake Eyes, with Storm Shadow, whatever. So I think the price is more a function of that than people buying multiples of them. I know that people will fill up a shelf with Vipers or blue shirts or whatever, but I think that's a very visible way that we can see one person collecting a lot of stuff. But people collect a lot of the individual characters as well. So I don't underestimate how many Sergeant Slaughters somebody might pick up. So yeah, I mean, look at your Flak Viper or whatever. I mean, those are not. It's an army builder, but they're not, especially well remembered, and nobody's chasing those down to build a shelf out of them. But the popular ones, like any other popular figure, the prices are going to go up because the demand is there. I think it's more that than the army building. But I do want to talk about the Snow Serpent hoarding, I guess I should say, because I remember that, and I believe it was on the yojo.com forum where that was talked about, and that was real. For a while, maybe, I don't know, year and a half or so, if you were to go on eBay and look up any listing for a Snow Serpent, you would find the highest bidder was the same account on every one of them. And it wasn't just like picking them all up on eBay. He had folks, scouring resale shops and toy stores and picking them up there. I don't remember exactly the number that he ended up with, but he had like giant tubs full of Snow Serpents in varying degrees of completeness. And this is something that kind of rubbed people the wrong way. And I wasn't really thrilled about it either. I was trying to get a Snow Serpent because I was trying to review it, but I was able to get a Snow Serpent and I didn't pay a lot for it. It was, I think what bothered people was the intent was kind of to deprive other people of the ability to get this figure, whether he succeeded or not. It was sort of described as like an economics experiment, which doesn't make any sense to me because it's an experiment that doesn't have any control, and he wasn't keeping like good, accurate records. Whatever data he was wanting to get from that experience would not be valuable. That's not how you run an experiment. So the whole thing at the time, the discussion surrounding it at the time was like, this guy's just kind of being a dick and doing this useless thing, and he seems to be trying to drive up the price, whether he did or not. So I think that really is kind of what people bristled at. But having said that, like Snow Serpents at the time, complete ones were running about $25. I got mine for about $25. I even at the extremes, it doesn't seem possible to collect so many of these that it will drive the price up so much that other people can't get it. There really are a lot of these out there. But being said that, don't be a dick, just don't do that, but that's just a general life thing, right? That's just a general rule for life. But I think that's probably in the end, the only thing that was proved from it is that there are so many of these out there that you individually are not likely to collect enough of them to remove them from the market and make it harder for other people to get them.
I'm really glad that you're familiar with that story, because I heard it years after the fact, and when people were arguing online about driving up value, and I'm sitting there going, why is this even a thing? Right? You can go to your local shops, you can go to the local shows, you can look on eBay if you see it there. Like
it didn't help that the guy was kind of a jerk about it. So I mean, that's
the problem.
Okay, yeah. The attitude around it. Look at me, look what I'm doing.
Yeah,
people react badly to that. But objectively, and just looking at the situation with that particular figure at the time, I don't think it really drove the price up. If it did, it wasn't very much.
If it did, it may have been just FOMO that somebody else was trying to get it before that person would. But depending where you go, like that person's not getting my local snow serpent or one of the local snow serpents here. They're probably not scouring marketplace in your area if Facebook was a thing around that period of time. So I don't know. I mean, that's why I think that it's a myth that you're driving up the value. I mean, look, I mean, just because it's over there on the shelf, a Generation 1 Optimus Prime, that just keeps going up in value. Do you think people army build him? I think there's also like casual fans who maybe don't collect as much, but want the absolute icons from their childhood, like Optimus, like Sergeant Slaughter, like, Batman, whatever, right? Maybe they want one of each, right? Maybe their favorite Marvel character, maybe they get a Spider-Man, something along those lines. And value is just going to go up due to, can you find it on the market, right? Like recently, like Brian, I mentioned to you that I just grabbed a recent Brazil Forca-Fera Felino figure, right? That popped up locally, and I did not want to spend the money I spent. When I looked at what the sold listings were, when I looked at what the unsold listings were, I was like, this person is well undervalued. And he's local. And I don't got to pay shipping, and I don't got to risk customs across the border because I'm up in Canada, right? And it's complete and it's good condition, and it's somebody I've bought from in the past. Now, are people army building, Estrella Brazil exclusive Felino? No, they're not. But he's worth multiple times the price of the Snow Serpent, right? So when people say that it drives up the scarcity of something, I'm like, but there are stuff that's already rare, like the Glenda figure. When that person bought it, could I just go grab another for the same price? No, right? The other one was the other one we saw on the sales floor at Joe Fest was part of a full set of all the Argent 7. And sorry, but I wasn't about to drop 10K on the entire Argent 7 set, right? So, yeah. So we're just about at the 1 hour mark right now, and I think we've had some really good thoughts here. Dave, did you want to talk a bit about the topic you've got coming up for Cobra Convergence, or is that going to be a surprise?
Well, actually, real quick, we From the Hilt threw out a really good comment while we were still talking about
I took my eyes off
pricing.
the chat.
So From the Hilt said buying more than one may actually keep the price down, and that's a really good point and something I didn't consider. Like, let's say you're trying to buy all these snow serpents, you go on eBay and you buy 50 snow serpents for $25. Well, you've just set the market price at $25, and it's going to be there for a while because all of those recent listings are going to be $25. So rather than increasing, or rather than some of those sales, going for a little more, some of them go for a little, like, you've set a market price when you buy something like that in a mass quantity. I think that's the point From the Hilt was trying to make, and it's a really good one that I had.
That is a good one, and I would also like to add to that if you have this idea that you're going to corner the market on it, drive up the price, and then sell them off, and buy a McMansion or something, that's not possible. As you sell them off, and as you add them back into the market, the supply goes up,
right?
So the price has to come down. So you're very unlikely to make more than you spend on that when you're hoarding them and then you're releasing them. So if that's anybody's idea, I don't think that's likely to work.
No.
Somebody did mention scalping, and I did want to make a comment about that. It's a little bit different from army building, and there has been a lot of scalping with classified. That is, like, it can create some issues when trying to find something locally, because you will have people who go to a retail store and just get everything, just empty the pegs, and that can at least temporarily drive up the price on things. For the most part, if scalpers are stockpiling, be patient. Don't pay scalper prices right away. Be patient, because eventually either they've got to unload it, or if it does increase in value, it's because it's important. It's because people want it. Not so much because the scalpers are getting it. I do dislike the activity of scalping because it creates an extra and unnecessary layer in the market. It is just an artificial markup on new products.
Yeah.
And that's not real cool. That's not how you be a good citizen in your community. But for the reason they profit on it is because people want things right away. They can't get their hands on them any other way. So they pay those prices, those marked up prices. My advice is to be patient. If you don't absolutely need it right now, be patient, and a lot of times those prices will come down. We've seen lots of examples of scalpers buying up a whole bunch of stuff, and then they didn't end up being as popular as they thought. So now they got to unload it, and so now the price is going. So yeah, just be patient. Be patient.
And fortunately, that's not the issue it was, just a year ago in classified. I think we all know now it's going to get here. We don't have to worry like we did, during the Cobra Island days.
Absolutely. I mean, like with Cobra Island, like I was not able to get up here the Target exclusive Viper, right? So I paid extra to get 2 of them because I wanted to pair up my my army builders at the time. And then what did they do? They released a 3-pack. Right. So now I'm thinking maybe I don't need. Do I need 4 Vipers and an officer? If I just need 2, now depending how you look at it, I'm either going to sell the Cobra Island ones at a loss, or I'm going to sell off the 3-pack ones to make money back, depending how you want to look at it. But that's what happens when you're not patient. And I should have known better, because a lot of times when Hasbro does something with a brand, they lean into what they've done with a previous brand, and look what they've done every time a Transformers figure has gotten scarce. They re-release it again. Maybe there's a little bit of different paint deco or something along those lines. But I remember when everybody went gaga over Masterpiece Rodimus, the Toys R Us exclusive, back in the day. But like, I don't know if it was just before or just after, but like then Takara overseas made one with the trailer. And you could have just gotten that one probably for the same price as the secondary market of the one domestically. And then they started making it again, maybe different mold, slightly different height and all that. Yeah. But if you just wanted to fill the character gap in your collection, you could do it, right? And, like I've done this before too, where I picked up something because I knew it was high demand. And somebody was like, yeah, I'll give you a few dollars extra for your time and your gas and all that. So I more or less just broke even anyway, right? Like I've had things where in Canadian dollars, I paid $35 post-tax. And somebody else would say, I'll give you 40 for your time and I'll come pick it up. Or you can ship it if they're not local. You can ship it with another box of stuff, right? And I'm like, you know what? I would do that if it was the situation was reversed. So let's do the deal, right? And I look on eBay, people are wanting 60, 70, $80 for it. And I'm like, yeah, but I feel dirty about that, right? Like the integrity is not worth those extra few dollars, right? Even to sell it anonymously, you would have that itching feeling inside of you that what if somebody did it to you, right? Unless you're a fly-by-night collector who doesn't really care about the community overall. But if that's the case, then you're not really part of anything. You're sort of just isolated over here. So what do you value more, I guess, is really self-control, Red Foreman. I have no self-control when it comes to buying stuff. So anyway,
you're in a safe space for that, right? We're all okay here for not having self-control, I think.
Therapy group.
Yes.
I'm gonna state an unpopular opinion, I guess, and that is that although like community is important to me and to most of the people that I deal with, it isn't important to everybody, and I don't think it absolutely has to be. Maybe people who are getting into something that they like or that they want to collect, they're like, okay, but I'm not signing up for this community thing that I don't really want to have anything to do with. You know what? That's okay too. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that exactly. So if that's the attitude, I don't really have an objection to that. I would still say like if you're doing something that hurts other people, that diminishes the experience of other people, then that's not just like out here on your own. That is affecting other people.
Right.
So I'd rather you not do that. But I'll also say that the community needs people who are dealers, who are doing this for money to make a profit. You know, we need the toy shops, we need the people with the tables at the toy shows, we need the eBayers, you know, we need those so that there is a market, so that you can, like, if everybody is attached to everything they own, then you can't, they don't part with it. You can't buy it. They're not putting it out there into the market for other people to buy. So I also think that it's fine for people to make a profit. But like in any other market, there are anti-competitive ways to do it. There are, you know, shady and underhanded ways to do it, and those are things that, I mean, these are not mysteries. You would identify them as shady in anything, and it's no different here. If you're using a shady practice to make money off of this stuff, it's no different than using a shady practice to make money off of securities or whatever. So so don't do that. But to Ken's point about the scarcity of the Viper, and then they release a multi-pack, Hasbro, it's a corporate entity. I'm not going to praise Hasbro, but I'm just trying to look from the company's point of view. They want to get these in your hands. Yes, they make their money when the scalper buys them, sure, but they benefit more when they're in your hands, rather than collected in somebody's garage somewhere to resell piece by piece on eBay. So yes, they make money either way. Yes, they make money regardless of who buys it, but getting it into your hands also has a value. Because they know that you're the ones who are going to want to go out and buy more. You're the ones who are actually passionate about it and are driving the demand for it. So they certainly haven't done it perfectly. You know, that there have been hiccups along the way, but yeah, they want you to get these things. They don't want you to, like, not be able to get one that you want, because you just can't find it. It's just nowhere unless you pay like 80% more than the retail value of it for something that just came out. That doesn't do anybody any favors. That doesn't do Hasbro any favors. So at least I hope they will be conscious of that in the future. And if people are having a hard time getting their hands on things, then they need to give people more opportunities. They have done that in some ways, like Dr. Mindbender, Serpentor. They did another run of those in case you missed out the first time, so that you could order them again. So they're trying at least.
Well, this is a popular topic. We're up to 60 people in the chat right now, and over 60 people at some point in time. So, like I said, people keep hitting that like button. And Dave, unless you got something to add, I do want to lean in a little bit to what Bryan was saying here a moment ago. Like, other than the Hasbro stuff, the resellers part, and, you know, like when we went to Joe Fest, you know, and I went to like Roma Collectibles or something like that, those people got to do it for a living. And some of the stuff I saw was like, this is fairly priced, especially some of the rare stuff. That's why it moves, right? And what do you call it? People tend to put a negative light on resellers, and I think it depends. I think each reseller is unique, because one thing that I did back in 2019, and some people I thought were friends labeled me as a reseller and like, oh, you're just in it for the money. But what I would do is I'd buy collections, and if my collection was at a certain point where I got, you know, the main characters I needed, and that was the only way I could get like special missions, wetsuit, and leatherneck or something like that, but I had to buy the whole collection. And I'm looking at it and going, okay, well, I don't want to just give everything away or blow it out for pennies on the dollar, because then you piss off the other resellers if you do that, right? Then I got to put the work in. I had to package everything up. I had to buy extra boxes from Uline. So then I was making money on the figures that I was selling, but I was also keeping stuff. So where does the collector end and the reseller begin? And I was trying to explain this to people, and they were just like, "No, you're just in it for the money. You got no passion." And I'm like, "You've never had a conversation with me, have you?" Right. And then some of those same people came back around when I started the YouTube channel. They're like, "I didn't know you liked this stuff so much, or you kept this kind of information around." I'm like, "That's because you bought something from me at some point in time, assumed I was a shady reseller, labeled me with that, and then it just sort of, that's where the relationship ended." And then 2 years later, during COVID, you came to me as, and we started talking about the actual stuff and the actual content. And you're like, don't be so quick to brush someone with the reseller brush. You know what I mean? Because not all of them are bad. I admit there are some bad ones, like the scalping that was touched on earlier, like buying the Hasbro stuff, like Brian was saying. Hasbro wants to get this in your hands, right? Maybe they don't care if it goes into the hands of just one reseller, but they also know that's bad for the market. Their bottom line will not change, but they also know that it's bad for spreading the word. So, yeah. No, I'm not really a high roller, Red Foreman. I pose as one sometimes. But if I was a high roller, I'd have a bigger home and a nicer car.
Red, you should have seen him on his platinum Segway rolling around Joe Fest, just throwing bling out at the people. It was ridiculous.
That was my evil twin brother. That wasn't me. He looks just like me, but that wasn't me.
You hit me in the head with a gold coin. I'm suing.
But it was the Sergeant Slaughter gold coin that I got from the Cobra Clutch Club. Ooh. You know which one I'm talking about. Yes. And you, Tabby, good to see you here in the chat. Says the Joe community is cool. Thank you for the super chat. And you are a good person as well. And you, Tabby. And yeah, Mike Hex, people that drove to every single Target to grab every single one they could pretend to charge gas and $50 per figure. That's evil. Yeah. Even at 50 Canadian, that would be much, but in American, you're talking 30% less. It should be, right? Yeah. That would not fit in my garage, Nolan. Sorry, were you saying something, Brian?
Well, I always get concerned when you're talking about degrees of something, because people get really squishy about their ethics. If you don't have bright lines. And this is not something where there's necessarily a bright line. Like there's no cosmic rule that says you can only mark something up 10%. But it's not really that complicated. It's the same kind of rules you would apply to any other market, to profiteering, to price gouging, that in any other market. So if you're unclear about how to not be a bad reseller, open a book, go to the internet, use your fingers to search, ask your mom. That information is out there. It really isn't that complicated. Just because we're talking about degrees and not a big bright line does not mean that therefore everything fits into an exception, and therefore maybe everything's okay. If I feel about it, I can get real squishy about my ethics. Now, it really isn't that squishy.
For sure. Sorry, there's a lot to unpack in that statement, so I'm just like, where do I go with that?
I think ethics is a whole other episode.
I was gonna say selling ethics, but the problem is the chat would be on fire and everybody would be fighting with each other, and I wouldn't be able to manage it. Brian Brink is actually the master of the charts on GeekDadLife.com. I always like to shout him out, but he likes the Uline boxes as well. Brian actually tracks every single HasLab.
Yeah,
and the trend that they go, and he has tracked the Dragonfly, and it looks like it's going to trend below the His tank, but it's still going to fund. And I don't remember whether it's on pace to hit the 19,000, because I think he's also averaged that last day spike. And if it only hits the average last day spike, you might not hit the 19,000. I think he told us that last week. I don't know how it's doing now, but we'll see, right? Because I think something like the Sky Striker, that last day spike was not indicative of the others. I mean, Bryan would know better. But every HasLab is unique, but it's good to have somebody average out the charts and kind of tell us in general where they're headed. So anyway, we're getting into kind of the last bit of the chat here. So I'll just quickly make a mention that to my Patreon supporters and channel members, your names are all in the description below as usual. You can check out patreon.com/toyconnections if you want to look at some of the benefits that I offer and some of the early access and some of the bonus videos that I do. So I just thought I'd mention that because I have a tendency to forget my patrons, to mention their names when I do live streams. So I know some people like to flash up the list. I know, Bryan, you always do the scroll at the end of your videos. Actually, let me ask you while I got you here. Do you finish the video and then check the Patreon list and then do this? You do it all, kind of all within 20? Okay.
Yes, that's exactly how I do it. I used to do videos a lot more in advance than I do now. Which created a problem. Like if I gain or lose a patron, the list wouldn't be up to date. So I've tried to fix that. I grab the list as soon as I'm done editing. I update that scroll. It's one of the perks, by the way. So like I do it because the people are supporting the channel, but it's also one of their perks is that they get their names in the video. So I want to be accurate. I don't want to leave everyone out. It's still possible that someone might be left out if they jump in there like right after I've
finished edited
the video, but I've minimized that, I think.
So I wanted to lean into that a little bit too, because I got asked as well, like, why don't you do, like, I don't think anybody expects it on a live stream. But I got asked as well, why don't you do the scroll at the end of your videos? And I thought to myself, because I didn't do exactly what you do. I finish videos sometimes way in advance, like the Green Beret video I finished that in the first 2 weeks of May.
Yeah.
And then I gave my Patreon supporters like 5 days or 4 days early access.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that list to change. I know some people say, why don't you leave it why don't you just finish it after your like, why don't you wait till you're about to release it before you finish it? There's a couple of things behind that, right? Like, for example, maybe I'm getting a little too technical here, but there's also, like, you have to leave it as an unfinished project on your system. So depending on how much space and you've got, and then there's still like a process at the end. It's not like it's not like you render it in a few seconds and throw it up. Right, you have to, like, depending on your system and the processing speed, it could take you 15-20 minutes to process the video. If you got a rush day, you can't really do that.
Yeah.
And then you've got to get the thumbnail up, you got to get the description up, right? Yeah, you could pre-type it all and copy and paste it, but then you got to upload it and make sure that all the what do you call it, security checks go through, right? So if you can do that, like Bryan, you clearly dedicate time right before you upload it to do that. For me, sometimes I can't do that. The day I want to release it, I just click public, and then I go, and then I walk away because maybe I've got a busy day at work or a busy day with a family or something. So I go with the video description because that's easier for me to update, like in between the time when I put it up on Patreon for early access and getting it public. I make sure I check the Patreon list for that. So that's why I do it that way, but everyone does it different. I don't know, maybe putting all those names in the description, maybe it's screwing up the algorithm. I have no idea, right? And Bryan, you've got something like 100 patrons anyway, so it'd be hard for you to fit all those names in, right? I may have to start moving it to an offline site in order as I get more.
Yeah, it gets complicated when you're trying to keep a schedule, but also stay up to date on something like Patreon. So you need to work in advance, but also be up to date. And so it's complicated. It's probably more complicated than a lot of people realize.
Yeah.
But working in advance, which I've not been able to do as much lately, but I try to do, it really helps you kind of keep control of your life, because sometimes you will not be sitting at the computer at the time this is supposed to go out.
Yes.
So yeah, to
Sometimes.
have any control of your life at all, working that way, kind of working in advance is
being in the Western time zone is a bit of a problem for me as well, because a lot of times, like, I'll make something public as I'm leaving work, so I don't have time on that day to get it rendered and everything, because I want to get the Eastern time zone people around dinner time on a Friday, for example, and the Western time zone people as they're leaving work. I try to do that. Right. And I just don't want to forget this before it's off the screen. But Red Foreman says that we are 4,041. Did the chat pull up? No, it did not. Okay. 4,041 away from being fully funded. Thank you once again for the super chat, Red Foreman. Dave, do you and Noel and Christian have a Patreon or no?
No, we don't. Years ago, I had a Patreon for Needless Things. And at the time, it was just the time involved. I was already producing a lot of content, and the time involved in producing the extra for patrons was just not tenable for me.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes for me, like, this is another great reason to have StreamYard is the bonus content I have. I don't do like fully edited videos, but I will give very extended behind the scenes stuff, what I'm working on, what my thoughts are, what my candid stuff is. Because let's face it, when we go out there in public, right? You do have to put your best face forward, right? If something's bugging me, you'll find about it behind the scenes. Because I mean, you know, like a few days ago, people asked me,
"This is the face I put forward."
Right, and you know, you're not faking it, right? None of us are, but you're putting your best face forward out there, and then
there's some editing to be done.
Yes,
the public does not need to hear every thought that goes through my head.
That's right, but your patrons
nobody wants that.
But your patrons are a little bit more like into your hardcore fan base,
right? Absolutely.
So, like for example, Payne's Toy Samples and Matt Comstock and Wilhelm and K-Dawg and Impossible Pie. I'm forgetting some names. They like to hear the candid stuff behind the scenes. Like I went and made like a 45-minute talk on StreamYard about my Joe Fest experience, what happened, like the trouble getting out of the airport and towards the hotel,
right.
You know, meeting people and hugging people for the first time. Like I didn't put that in my 12-minute Joe Fest walkthrough because the casual audience doesn't need to see that. Right. But the people who talk to you more often or who are more your diehard supporters, they really care about that stuff. Right. So yeah, that's just one of those things. Anyway, I'm not trying to plug mine or anyone's Patreon too much, but I do want to talk a little bit about being a content creator because we have 3 content creators on here, right? And for both of you who've been doing this longer than me, you know what I'm going through. So it's kind of like I've been at this for just over 2 years, right?
Yeah, and there's no school for this. You know, you do it, and then you have to figure out how it works the best with your life, your schedule, your reality. It's and for folks who are watching it, like hopefully you're just watching this and enjoying this and it comes out really cool and you like it. But there is a process behind making it, and it's not, I think there's a lot more to it than maybe a lot of people realize.
Yeah. And sorry, did you just gain a patron? I joined HCC. Guess I should have joined. I don't know. Maybe he was already a patron of yours, but maybe you just gained one. I'm not sure.
Well, thank you. Well, either way, thank you.
Yeah.
Now maybe I can get the HasLab Dragonfly.
Depends on when the Patreon payout comes out, right? So
seriously, I mean, I hate to. What am I talking about? I love derailing the topic. I still haven't backed it. I'm still thinking about it. Space is the issue.
Yeah.
Space is the issue. I have no idea where I would put that monster. I really don't. But I want it. But I don't know.
You will display Wild Bill, Airborne, and Glenda, though. No, why do I keep saying Airborne? Ripcord. Did I say Airborne earlier too? Yeah, I think I said Airborne.
We all knew what you meant.
It was Ripcord. Okay, because everyone keeps asking for Airborne, and he's on the box of the Dragonfly, the original Dragonfly. So it's Ripcord. Anyway, whatever. That's fine. Yeah, and Ratface is a new content creator as well. Before he creates a video, he needs to be in the correct mood to do it in the first place.
Yeah.
And thank you, Ratface, for being Cobra Convergence. I really appreciate it.
Yes, new to Cobra Convergence this year. And you Tabby, a lot of editing, a lot of work to be done because when you finish a bigger video, like I just finished my entire series of the history of LJ and WWF superstars, for example. right? I've done 4 of the 6 videos. The other 2 are waiting to be released throughout the summer. They're kind of in the queue to get done before August. When you put that much research in, that much time, that much photography, that much editing, you're tired after.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you could be watching a comedy, you could be watching Big Bang Theory or something like that, and your brain will not pay attention because you've used up all your brain juice over there, let alone every single thing that you have to do in your life, whether it's work, whether it's family, whether it's, I don't know, I don't do work in the yard, but some people do in my backyard's right there. But it's just one of those things. And it really drains you. And there's a lot of moving parts to get it working. But yeah, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. You know, there's a lot of good, a lot of bad that comes with being a content creator. But at the end of the day, you keep going. But like right now, like last night, I was thinking to myself, what video am I going to do next? And I'm sitting there like, I'm drawing a complete blank, you know? A lot of times I talk to one of my first patrons, Troy about this. And he's always got some good ideas, but I didn't even have the energy to reach out last night and say, Troy, what do you think I should make next? Because, what if he puts out a really hard topic, like, oh, let's do history of Transformers 1989 or something like that. And I'm like, that's a really hard topic to make, and a lot of research right now. I just want to fiddle with one O-ring figure and be like, knee bends here, elbow bends there, hit upload. Because so I'm like, I better not reach out to my friends about this right now.
The YouTube algorithm does not like for you to take time off. It's pretty brutal. So yeah, it wants you to keep going.
What happened to you, like not personally, but how did the algorithm treat you in the year off, Bryan?
It took a bit to like get back, and it's still a struggle. I still think that I'm disfavored in the algorithm a little bit compared to when I was really clicking before I took the hiatus. But I often reach that state where you're talking about, where I have just done something and I'm really tired. So I've kind of stopped looking at the numbers so closely. I just can't live my life by that anymore. So like the numbers are what they are, and I'm going to do what I do. For those who are like really trying to make a living at it, they live or die by that algorithm, and the algorithm is brutal. It wants you to keep going. It wants a constant flow of content, interactions, all of these things. I just can't. I've reached a point where I just can't worry about it that much. I just got to keep chugging.
And the amount of work you put in relative to the views is completely disproportionate.
Oh yeah,
right. Like
unrelated.
Yesterday, I set up 2 cameras and I went live and I unboxed G.I. Joe Classified stuff, and I had Gazz come on, completely like spur of the moment kind of thing. That has more views than the Green Beret history video that I stewed over and did all this extra research and all that. I'm like, all I got to do is click live and go. Why didn't I just do that? But you also have to get your own creative satisfaction out of it, right? The unboxing was an in-the-moment thing for something that's relatively new for people who are going through the same thing. A lot of people in the chat, some of you here, have bought those similar figures, right? And then so I thought, let's do that as an in-the-moment thing. The Green Beret thing, pun intended, is an evergreen piece of content, right? That will probably, still keep showing up, and, you'll get a couple of views here and there over the course of time. And anyway, I'm really leaning into it. Dave, talk about your channel.
Well, the Needless Things YouTube channel, you can check it out. I usually have 5 things a week. That was not my intent. I review lots of different toy lines, including G.I. Joe Classified. Every once in a while, a Vintage Joe review. As a matter of fact, this coming week, I'll be reviewing the newest wave of Classified that just hit everybody over the weekend. And then every other week, we do a live stream with Audible Interlude, a G.I. Joe podcast. And you can follow everything, Needless Things channel on Instagram and Audible Interlude podcast on Instagram. That's the place to interact and to see what we're doing.
I love how I just completely transitioned to you and you quickly just pivoted very quickly. Like I was talking, and then like within half a second I said, Dave, talk, and you just jumped in like a professional DJ. I love it.
I've been doing this for a minute.
Yeah. And you've got, what do you call it? What's going on here? Okay, apparently I don't know how to use StreamYard anymore. You've got some amazing swag that you're wearing on your head, but you know who's also got some amazing swag he's wearing on his head, and it just fell out of the sky, landed and fell on his head, the perfect size, perfect fit, and everything is the G.I. Joe
I'm
legend
Dan.
himself.
I'm from Needle Things.
Yeah. Yeah. Bryan, anything you want to say about Cobra Convergence, HTC 788?
Nah. Okay. No. All right. Yeah. I'll say a couple things. So yeah, you know what? It's a nice hat. I don't have hats. I should get hats. So yes, Hooded Cobra Commander 788 or HCC 788 on YouTube. That's my main home. I've been doing, G.I. Joe videos for a little over 9 years now, and we've been doing Cobra Convergence every year, almost every year, since 2016. It's an opportunity for the G.I. Joe fan community, the creators out there who are doing content about G.I. Joe, the people who are passionate about it, to kind of work together, to do something fun together. We focus it on Cobra because that's both a specific topic and broad enough that it can encompass many, many things. So there's a lot of opportunity for creativity, for just like really making some amazing things. And there have been some amazing things created for Cobra Convergence over the years, and it's no different this year. When you give a format to incredibly amazing creative people, they are incredibly amazingly creative and they make cool stuff. And so I'm always excited to see what the guys do. So my website is hcc788.com. There is a calendar for the presenters of Cobra Convergence. There every day in July there is at least one, sometimes two presenters doing special Cobra content related to Cobra Convergence, and I'll try to highlight each of them on social media and on the website. So please check out the website. Please check out all of the names listed on the website, because those guys are doing the real work. They are doing they are creating G.I. Joe content that really comes from the heart. This is the community that kept G.I. Joe alive even when Hasbro was doing nothing with it. So I sincerely thank everyone who is on the calendar. But even if you're not on the calendar, there is a link again on the website on hcc788.com. Where you can submit your own Cobra Convergence entries and get those featured as well. So please participate. I would like everyone who is a fan of G.I. Joe to do something for this. It's my favorite thing throughout the year is I get to connect to Toy Connect, if you will, with a lot of creators and make a lot of friends and reconnect with old friends. So that's my pitch. That's my spiel for Cobra Convergence, and I hope everybody checks it out.
Awesome. And we're gonna wind down here in a moment, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew where to find Cobra Convergence, because I flashed up the link there and a few people already have. And I didn't have any slides ready for this show just because I realized how I realized it was going to be a full topic, even without us talking about, even without us pulling up photos and everything. But here's the calendar for Cobra Convergence. You can see some days there's two presenters, some days there's one. We're now past the first week and into the second week. So you can see today we've got the Skull reviews, and as we move on, my good buddy Jay Bartlett's there as well. I'm going to be on the 14th, followed by JLS, followed by Action Robot Punch and Audible Interlude, and then you go on and you see more of our friends here. Some people have been here a long time, like Joe Berg. Some people like Ratface will be here for his first time, and Island of Misfit Toys and Treasures and Toy Domination, it's their first time. Rob Vegas, it's his second show, but he was a pinch hitter last year. Like, I think he wasn't advertised, and then somebody dropped out and he sort of came in, as the pinch hitter. So he was officially part of Cobra Convergence last year, but this is going to be his first time as a featured presenter So, yeah. Anything else you want to add, Dave, Bryan, before we close up shop for the day / week / whatever? Or in Bryan's
good.
case,
I think we had a great chat.
Yeah.
I'm Dan from Needle Things. Watch my podcast, Audible Interludes.
I don't wear hats, unfortunately. But.
That's uncanny.
But for real, look at Dave from Needless Things and Audible Interlude. Those guys, they're really cool, and it was nice enough to see them at their panel at Joe Fest. So that was awesome.
That was at nighttime, wasn't it?
Well, we had the kickoff panel Saturday morning, which the audio version's available wherever you get your podcasts, and then we hosted the Big Joe Game Show during the evening.
Okay, that's the one I was thinking of.
Yeah,
that was I think just before the karaoke. I think
that's correct.
So yeah, so before Hans Chow went up and did his amazing karaoke thing, which I was downstairs at the bar watching because he had it streaming. So yeah. Anyway, all right. You can find the links to HC788, both for Cobra Convergence and his channel, as well as Needless Things / Audible Interlude in the description section below. Otherwise, if all goes well, I'll see you all again next week. I haven't scheduled the next TKO yet, but look for my video for Cobra Convergence to drop on Friday this week. And yeah, thanks everybody in the chat. Thanks to the esteemed guests today. And we'll see you soon. We turned the world blue for Cobra Convergence. I know that was the 2019 theme, but you're wearing blue, so we're going to turn the world blue. And yeah, take care, everybody. Stay safe. Yo, Joe. And knowing is half the battle. Have a good one.
Oh, bro.